That was it. The only Canadian Pacific train I ever filmed. That was taken in 2022, and just a few months later on April 14th, 2023, CP merged with Kansas City Southern to create today's CPKC. At the time, we had no idea how quickly CPKC would start repainting and patching their units. I assumed it would take about a month, and I was dead wrong. Now, it's mid-2024, and they still haven't repainted a single unit. Anyways, I thought that by May, a large portion of the CPKC fleet would be repainted or at least patched. And so, I decided to go to Bensonville, Illinois, the closest location to my home where CPKC tracks were, so I could document CP and KCS power before it was repainted or patched. Fittingly, the date we chose for what is probably my greatest rail fanning trip ever was symbolically the 1-year anniversary of me rail fanning. May 29th, 2023. Unlike most journeys I go on, this one was actually entertaining, because the highway we took happened to parallel the CTA for a large portion of its route. Here you can see some of the CTA's quite rare MAU equipment, and even a diesel. Didn't even know CTA had diesels until this happened. I'm not exactly sure of the location here, but it's clearly some sort of yard with a large amount of CTA sets stored in it. Wondering why they're here and not actually operating. Once we got past the yard, we were now paralleling the CTA, heading west into Chicago. Here you can see a large station. This definitely looks like it was built in the 90s. I can tell by just the way the font is. Maybe it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure it is. While driving under this overpass, we stumbled across the first freight train of the trip. I'm pretty sure it's BNSF, judging by the rolling stock. Here's the CTA 87th Street station, and a CTA train, which is, I think, parked at the 87th station. Here's another station, not sure what this one is because the car goes by it so fast I can't read the signs. Here's another station, except this one has a train departing from it. Next station, no train this time, unfortunately. Probably the most interesting thing we saw on the way there, on paper, was this Metro maintenance shop. Unfortunately, the only piece of rail equipment we managed to catch a glimpse of was this coach. That was made up for by the onslaught of CTA trains that came right after. And they were all going in the opposite direction of the car, so I couldn't, pace them.
There goes.
While I was trying to film a couple other CTA trains, which I ended up missing, we finally approached Chicago, with the glorious, definitely Cirrus Tower coming into view. Oh, and there was also this CTA station. Down there you can see the platform. As we rocketed through, we noticed this train sitting in the yard.
In 9.2 miles, take exit 20 onto 1st Avenue.
Then, we finally saw a CTA train going in the same direction as us. Unfortunately, the car was much faster than the train. The penultimate CTA train was this one, also sitting in the yard. followed by this overpass which didn't have a train in it, but I thought the signal was neat. And the final CTA train was this one, which happened to also be sitting in a yard. Now we arrived at CPY010A, which had a bus passing through it. This was the line, the CPKC trackage. This was the Franklin Park Metro Station. A guy I had seen rail fanning on the previous day told me that this was a good spot. He wasn't wrong. Immediately once we arrived, this massive yard movement started pulling into the CPKC yard. Interestingly, there's a patched Chicago and Northwestern RCPE hopper in the consist. Actually, I'm pretty sure every hopper in this consist is an RPCE hopper. They don't have a X at the end of their designation, so they can't be a leasing company. If anyone knows what RCPE actually is, please let me know. The last car on the consist was one of these NS Protect 3 coil shields. Pretty sure these are rare, as I've seen plenty of people foaming over them on Virtual Railfan. As we sat down and brought out the lunch we packed for that day, a CPKC grainer pulled into the yard with a duo of XCP engines, led by an AC-44 and trailed by a GEVO. Now, every full CP or full KCS lash-up I caught was an event. After that, to my surprise, a Metro train showed up, and I can't believe I didn't expect there to be a Metro train, because this is the Franklin Park Metro Station! Anyways, the train was being pushed by an ex-Amtrak F59 PHI, sold in the Amtrak paint scheme. Nice. As the Metro stopped at the Franklin Park station, I turned around and realized there was action in the yard. Too bad I wasn't over there at the time to catch it. On the left side, two Norfolk Southern locomotives, an AC-44C6M and an SD-70 Ace, or they could be a -9 and SD-70M-2, but those other two are more likely, so I'm going with them. A CPAC-44 and a rather bland-looking plane are visible. The two NS engines are making their way from the left side of the yard to the right side of the yard, and they're backing up onto that other track you can see in the corner. I'm assuming they're going into temporary locomotive storage on that side of the yard. And as they roll away, you can see that they were coupled up to another XCP AC-44. After the NS engines disappeared, the left of the ex-CPKC 44s started moving and backed down the exact same track as the two NS engines. As you'll see later, it was parked in front of them in the storage tracks. Before the CPKC 44 could fully make its way into the yard, the crossing bells came on for another Metra, this time led by an F-59 PHI, also in the ex-Amtrak livery. Now it was finally time to actually head into the yard. First off, we have CPKC 9808 and XCP AC44 tied down here in the yard. Get your photos of the CP logos and reporting marks while you can, because they won't last much longer. Also on the yard was this GP33 Eco, number 2319, and a pair of Union Pacific SD40-2s. At the time, I didn't know there was a UP yard also in Bensonville, so I thought this was insanely rare. There was also this Mow truck just kicking up dust in the yard, not sure what it was actually doing. Now we get a better look at the two UPSD40-2s, 1592 and 1914. 1592 is in the superior Union Pacific standard cab scheme, and 1914 is in the slightly lamer scheme with the wings on the front. But more exciting than both of them was this CPKC/SU/CP caboose behind them. Here's a better shot of 1914 showing the subpar wing job on the nose. And now at the storage tracks, you can see another GP33 Eco, the NS engines, and a couple more CP units. Then, the first train we saw while pulling into the yard rolled in. And as the orange locomotive that rounded the corner came into view, I thought, oh boy, a BNSF train. It's probably a GEVO leading, but maybe there'll be a war bonnet or something in the lash-up. Then it got closer, and I realized there was only one unit, so I was a little bit disappointed. Then it got even closer, and I realized there was a CP logo in black on the front of the locomotive. Because this is not a BNSF engine. This is CP 8757, and it's a special unit dedicated to Orange Shirt Day, which is some Canadian holiday I don't know anything about. Just to make things clear, I did not come to Bensonville on this day specifically because I knew 8757 was coming. This was a complete chance encounter. After the unit stopped briefly to let the conductor flip some switches, it quickly pulled up and passed by the CPKC44. Unlike most special units I see, this one was going insanely slow, which allowed for a great look at its unique paint scheme, which is literally just the CP scheme, but orange. In fact, it was going so slowly that I was able to literally walk alongside it for a bit before it picked up speed heading into the yard. As we continue the lamest pace of all time, 8757 passes by the two UPSD 40-2s and Caboose. You thought this was going to be the star of the trip, didn't you? A special unit leading solo going at low speed? Doesn't that sound great? Well, stay tuned because it gets even more ridiculous. Soon, the GP33 Eco started shuffling some intermodal cars behind the 8757's train, which we soon nicknamed the Giant Epicness Train, and you'll realize why I called it that as soon as the DPU rolls in. Anyways, 8757 slowed to an incredibly low speed as it headed under the overpass. I have no idea why it's going so slow. I'm guessing there's a really strict low speed limit when it enters the yard. With the front of the train now out of sight, I take the opportunity for these shots. 2319 is still moving behind the cars, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to get any good shots as obviously these fat boxcars are blocking the way. That was until these cars rolled through. Not exactly know what they're used for, but they did allow me a very nice shot of the GP33 switching the intermodal yard. As for interesting rolling stock, there was this Illinois Central Gulf flat car with some iron on it, and a Burlington Northern Hopper, which I was going crazy over until I learned they're not rare. Oh! Yeah, I was more excited for this than I was for 8757, because I didn't know 8757 existed. The mid-DPU on this train was a KCS Gevo. Of course, I had never seen a KCS engine prior to this, and this was one of the first KCS engines to make its way up to Bensonville after the merger. Okay, so prepare for a mini rant here, but I've seen these gondola connection gondolas a lot, and I'm not exactly sure what they are. This one has WFRX reporting marks, but I've seen several with other leasing companies and Norfolk Southern reporting marks. Were they a Norfolk Southern marketing stunt like 30 years ago or something? I'm not sure, someone tell me. Anyways, from behind that cursed gondola, the GP33 Eco was making more switching moves. with the giant epicness train. Still can't believe I named it that, but with the giant epicness train now stopped, we headed up onto the overpass so we could get a shot of the GP33 Eco not obscured by massive pieces of rolling stock. Fortunately, on the way, we got a nice view of the two UPSD 40-2s from above. If you look in the background, assuming it's not blocked behind a giant pillar, you can see the KCS DPU. In this shot, you can see the storage tracks. Behind that one CPKC 44 is an ACU and GP15-1. Man, I wish they actually moved so I could see them. Here you can pretty clearly see the KCS DPU in the distance. Finally, we made it over to the GP33 Eco. Fun fact, in the original version of the Bensonville vlog, I called this thing a GP60 Eco, and I'm very ashamed of myself for that. Anyways, it was not moving, so we waited and waited. I shouldn't be surprised. This is rail fanning, but like you wait like 90% of the time. Anyways, here you can see the intermodal ramp. And then finally it moved. Just kidding! The giant epicness train was the one that moved, not the GP33. Great. So then we waited even more, and finally the GP33 started pushing back into the yard. After it stopped, we realized we were running out of time, and if we didn't get going sometime in the next 2 hours-ish, then it would be dark by the time we got home, and we didn't want that. But I still had 2 more places to visit. The first one was the bottleneck in the middle of the yard. With 2 massive yards on either side, I knew that this place would be packed, and I was right. Immediately once we got there, we caught a glimpse of a CPKC XCP AC44 shoved as a DPU in the middle of this train. Thankfully, the giant epicness train placed its open cars here so I could see it. Then I went ahead and took a look at these 2 CP standard cabs that were here. An SD40-2 with the still Canadian spec work, quite nice, and another GP33 Eco. These were working in the yard. After that, the giant epicness train started to get on its way again. With no locomotives to see, I brushed it off. I looked left into the yard to see the other yard switchers, and with that, all priorities were out the window, and across the cornfield, I needed to get a decent shot of this unit right now. Unfortunately, I couldn't just walk into the yard, as that's kind of illegal, so I made my way into the parking lot of this nearby I'm not even sure building, where I was able to look through a small cutting in the trees, and there it was. SU 4448, one of very few SU line engines left on CPKC's roster. This unit was built in 1981 for SU line, served all the way through SU, through Canadian Pacific, and is now working for CPKC as a yard switcher in Bensonville. I was blown away by this unit. Turns out it's actually been at Bensonville for decades. It's been the yard switcher here since I believe around 2006 to 2009 it was allocated here, and it hasn't left since, aside from the time it did. As of the recording of this video, 4448 is in fact not at Bensonville. A couple days ago, it was on a train heading up into St. Paul. I'm assuming it's going there for maintenance and hopefully not for storage. But heading back to May 29th, take in these shots of 4448. Unfortunately, it didn't move the entire time we were here. I was really adamant on catching the thing in action, but unfortunately, it didn't move. Don't you worry though. 4448, I will be back. And I will catch you moving, mark my word. Anyways, after that happened, I took a quick peek at the yard to discover 8757 was also here. And right before leaving, this train rolled through with an NS Jevo leading, KCS Ace in second, and CPSD 40-2 in tow. After that, it was time to head to Railroad Avenue, which is on the other end of the Bensonville yard. I was hoping to catch some hump action and just some other trains, maybe even 8757 again. But as I approached, we drove down this section of highway with track and spotted a train. And the leading locomotive on this train happened to be NS 4002, one of the shadow bonnets on a Union Pacific grain train. These things are rare. There's only 4 around, and seeing one on a Union Pacific grain train on CPKC trackage is just so incredibly unlikely. At the end of the train, there was also this Union Pacific Jevo as a DPU, but literally no one cares. We drove back and pulled off to the side of the road so I could get some beauty shots of the 4002. This was the first Norfolk Southern special unit I ever caught, and I think it's funny that it was here and not at, the depot, where I catch, all of my Norfolk Southern trains.
Norfolk Southern, what's your function?
Hooking up the country, helping business run. They haul everything safely and on time. They connect the factories built along the lines. We've got the goods to help give this economy a spark. Our trains, tracks, and bridges, oh, they'll get you pretty far. Norfolk Southern, what's your function? Hooking up the country, helping business run. Norfolk Southern has a function. Helping this big country move ahead as one. We're investing big to keep our country in the lead. We keep moving to deliver what you need. And that means jobs. Lots of people making lots and lots of things. Let's get your business rolling now. Everybody sing. Norfolk Southern, what's your function? Hooking up the country, helping business run. Norfolk Southern has a function. Helping this big country move ahead as one.
Norfolk Southern, what's your function?
Hooking up the country, helping business run. They haul everything safely and on time. They connect the factories built along the lines. We've got the goods to help give this economy a spark. Our trains, tracks, and bridges, oh, they'll get you pretty far.
Since I spent way too much time looking at NS 4002, we had to head back home after that. On the way back, we actually passed back over Bensonville. As you can see, the GP33 Eco's in the same spot, the 2 NS engines have moved, the CP AC70 ACU is moved, and now we get a clearer view of the UP GP15-1 mini tunnel motor visible in the yard. I really like these engines. I definitely need to get a better shot of one day. We also passed over this yard. I'm completely clueless as to which one it is. There's 2 Norfolk Southern engines down there, so it might be NS, but then again, those might just be foreign power. Who knows? This is what the other side of the yard looks like. If anyone knows what yard this is, please let me know. Oh, and we also passed over this giant, massive quarry, which I thought was cool. However, passing by the depot on our way back, we saw this. An NS SD70M-2 and SD40-2 on B09. I thought that they had been replaced by -9s, so this was incredibly exciting. Only a couple weeks later, and by that I mean an entire month, which, I mean, it's 4 weeks, that's a couple of weeks, yeah, blah, 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 whatever. On July 4th, I managed to catch the duo again, with 3326 leading and 2662 in second. I've never seen an SD40-2 on B09 following this. Shortly after, 3326 left, and 3326 and 3517, the two NSSD40s that used to work the steel local freight, were gone forever. It's sad. Those used to be the two main locomotives I was excited for when going to the depot. I even saw them on my first ever visit. But that doesn't really have anything to do with Bensonville. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and yes, I am planning to return to Bensonville sometime soon. So, thanks for watching, and come back for another documentary just like this one. Wait, you're still here? Oh yeah, I forgot, this video has a post-credit scene. Well, enjoy this really cringe performance of my song CPKC GP33 Eco. GP33 Eco, it's not a GP60 Eco. It wasn't rebuilt from a GP60, it was rebuilt from a GP9. These locomotives are definitely not eco-friendly, absolutely whatsoever. They're just called that because CP is trying to greenwash you. Yeah, the CPKC GP33 Eco is the most useless locomotive ever. The CPKC GP33 Eco makes me cringe every time I see it. Actually, not really, I guess. I don't know. I actually kind of like them. They look cool.